So now that we've completed all of the first column where we have pre-planned how our server should respond when somebody makes a HTTP request with GET or POST or DELETE to our articles route, the next step is to move on to the next column. And now, in this case, our route is actually a specific article. In this case, and it could be anything. And when we're writing our server code, we're writing it to be all encompassing. But when the user, or the client rather, targets a particular route, they will put in something like /articles/Jack Bauer or /jQuery or whatever it may be. That is the specific resource that they're looking for inside the articles collection. And now we have to write our server code on how it should handle these requests. So as an example, in this table, you'll see everything referring to a specific article, say an article on Jack Bauer. But when we write the code, as you'll see in just a minute, we're actually writing the code to encompass any single article within the articles collection. So let's get started. So the first things first, we have to make provisions for how to handle the GET request on that particular route. Now, previously, we've been using our trusty app.get method, but now that you've learned about chaining these route handlers, I want you, as a challenge, to write the code for our next GET request using the chained syntax that you saw in the last lesson. So pause the video now and try to complete this challenge by writing the code for our GET request. All right, so how did that go? So now that we're no longer using app.get, instead we're using app.route. And if you had any trouble at all, always remember that the first point of call is the documentation, and it's super detailed on how you can use it. So it shouldn't be too difficult to get started there. So now that we have app.route, and then inside the parentheses, we add in the actual route, and then we chain on to that method a .get method, and then the rest is exactly the same as we've done before. So let's see it in practice. So right up here, I'm just going to add a quick comment, and this is going to be the requests targeting all articles. And then I'm going to copy and paste that down here, and this one is going to be requests targeting a specific article. So now that we've got our sections divided up, it makes it a little bit easier for us to see the next time when we're just scrolling through our code. So now I'm going to write my app.route because we now have a different route, whereas previously our app.route and all of its chain methods dealt with the articles route. Now we are dealing with a specific article. So the way that we structure this will be articles, so the same as before, but then we have another /, and then this is where the client should specify the particular resource that they want. Now, again, if we go back to our Express documentation, you should remember that previously we had talked about route parameters. And this is where inside that particular URL, we added in a colon and then basically kind of like a variable name, which we will assign to whatever the client assigns to their URL request. So in their example here, you can see that the route path is /users / user ID. And when the client makes the request, the URL looks like this. And so you've got /users /34. So when that enters the server, then 34 will get assigned to a variable named user ID, and we'll be able to use it inside that callback. So this is exactly what we're going to do for our specific resource, which is a single article. Now, in our case, let's say that the client has to use the article title as that parameter. So I'm going to call it article title. And now we've basically completed our route. So it's time to chain on our method, which is the get method. And I'm going to separate it out so that we can see it a little bit easier. So the get method is going to be the same as what we've done before minus the route. So it's simply just going to be a callback function with a request and response. Now, if we're going to run our code right now, before I get the chance to write the other change on methods, then we have to add a semicolon here to cap all of those chained methods off so that it doesn't flow on to the next line. So now inside my app.get, essentially, so now inside the callback function in my app.get, well, effectively, then I'm going to need to read from my database to look for a specific article with that article title. So in this case, I'm only expecting a single match. So instead of using the find method, I'm going to be using the find one method. And then I'm going to specify the conditions that it has to match, namely that its title has to match that title parameter that we got in through the URL. And then we're going to add the callback to see if there were any errors or if we got the resulting document. So inside our app.get, I'm going to write article, which is the name of my model, find one, and then the condition is that the document has to have a title that is the same as the one that was requested by the client inside here. So now if we had, say, something like localhost 3000 / articles / Jack Bauer, then inside our app.route, we should be able to tap into the request.params.article title, and that will be equal to whatever the value the user put into that URL. So in this case, it'll be Jack Bauer. If they were looking for localhost 3000 / articles / say jQuery, then this will be equal to jQuery instead. Now, if that is at all confusing and this feels new to you, then be sure to flip a few modules back and revisit that lesson where we covered express parameters in more detail. And also be sure to read through the express documentation on this. So I'm assuming that this is all very familiar to you because we've used it many times before. So now I'm going to go into my get method. So when a user makes a get request, then we should be able to tap into that request or rec, and we should be able to tap into the params that were passed in with the request, and also the name of the variable, which in this case is called article title. So this is going to go over here, and that is going to be essentially the search condition. So we're going to look through our collection of articles. We're going to find one document where the title is equal to the one inside the request parameters, that is the article title. And once that is complete, then we're going to have a callback function with an error and also the found article. Now in this case it should be singular because we're only expecting one document to come back, whereas up here when we use find, I tend to have that variable name as plural. So now that we've got our found article, the next step is to add our curly braces, and inside here is where all the action is going to happen. So what do we want to happen? Well, if there indeed was an article that was found inside our articles collection that matches the title that the client put in the URL, then in that case, we're probably going to send that back to the client. So in this case, we'll say something like, if there indeed was a found article, then we're going to res.send that found article. But if there weren't any articles that were found, then we're going to res.send the text, no articles matching that title was found. And now we can close off everything with semicolons and get rid of all our warnings and errors, and we're ready to test our code. So let's go into our Postman. So let's go into Postman and let's change the method from delete to get. And we're going to change also the URL from /articles to localhost 3000 /articles / whatever it is that we want to put in as the article title parameter. Now, if we were to search for, say, an article on jQuery, then we would write /articles /jQuery. Now, before we can test it, if you look inside Robo3T, remember that the last HTTP request that we made inside Postman was to ask the server to delete all of our articles. So if we clicked on View Documents, you should be able to see precisely 0 documents inside that collection. So remember where previously I said copy what already exists inside that collection so that we can quickly fill it back up? Well, this is the time for that. So we want to go and add or insert our documents all in one go. Now, if you have for some reason lost that copy and paste, then don't worry, because if you go to that GitHub page for the project and scroll right down, then you should see a section where it says repopulate database, and I've got all of these documents over here for you to copy and simply paste into Robo3T. So we're going to delete the existing braces, and then we're going to paste everything that we copied over, and now we're going to hit save, and when we view documents again, then voila, we've got all our documents back, which is wonderful. So we're now ready to go into Postman and query for a particular article. So you can see we've got articles with titles such as REST, API, Bootstrap, DOM, Jack Bauer. So let's go for one of those. Let's just put REST in here, and I'm going to type it out exactly the same way as I see over here. So now when I click send, it should be making a GET request to the route that is /articles /REST, and that will fall into this method right here. And we're going to look inside the request parameters for something called article title, which is of course whatever comes after the / after articles. And then we're going to look through our articles collection to find a document that has that title. And if we did have a found title that matches it, then we should get it sent back from the server. So let's go ahead and click it. And you can see I have now got back my article on REST, and I've got the title and the content. So now if we wanted to make a request and we wanted the client to be able to access a article title that has a space in it, you have to remember that the way that URL encoding works is that a space is usually represented in URL form as %20. And we've looked at this previously, but if you just wanted a quick reminder, then if you go to the reference page on HTML URL encoding, then you can take a look down on this table and see that the space character is represented by %20 and all of these other characters which also have their representations. So that means that if we wanted to make a GET request to find the article that has a title of Jack space Bauer, then we would write something like Jack %20 Bauer, and when I hit send, I get back my title on Jack Bauer and my content as well. So remember that when it comes into here, that %20 gets decoded into a space, and we get Jack space Bauer that we get to use to search our articles for.